The first scream didn't come from the cockpit. It came from row 2, sharp and involuntary, the kind that escapes before pride can stop it. Heads snapped up, cups rattled in their holders. Somewhere behind the curtain separating first class from the rest of the plane, a baby began to cry, startled by the sudden spike in noise. Jasmine Carter felt the sound before she understood it. Her chest tightened. Her fingers froze over the armrest. She didn't turn her head. Not yet. She had learned early and often that the first reaction could decide everything. The aircraft was already rolling. Slow, deliberate, the low growl of engines vibrating up through the floor, through the soles of her sneakers into her bones. The cabin lights were dimmed to a soft morning amber. Outside the window, Atlanta blurred into streaks of concrete and steel. "Ma'am," a voice said close. Too close. "I need you to remove your headphones." Jasmine lifted her eyes first, then her chin. The flight attendant stood over her, blocking the aisle, one hand braced against the overhead bin, as if the plane itself might buck. Linda Moore. 40-something. Perfect posture. Smile calibrated for compliance, not kindness. "I'm not wearing headphones," Jasmine said. Her voice was calm, even. She could hear her own heartbeat anyway. Linda's eyes flicked down, then back up, irritation flashing before professionalism snapped back into place. "Your phone. Please put it away. We're preparing for departure." "I already did," Jasmine said. She turned her wrist slightly to show the dark screen resting on her thigh. "Airplane mode. Screen off." Linda didn't move. She didn't apologize. She looked past Jasmine toward the front galley where the purser stood half-hidden, watching. Behind Jasmine, someone cleared their throat. Loud. Meaningful. "I don't understand why she's still sitting there," a woman said. Her voice carried polished and practiced the sound of someone used to being heard. "That seat is supposed to be reserved." Jasmine didn't have to look to know who it was. She'd clocked Barbara Whitman the moment she boarded. The pearls, the tailored linen jacket, the eyes that scanned people the way others scanned menus, sorting, judging, discarding. "This is highly irregular," Barbara continued. "A minor in first class, unaccompanied." "Isn't that against policy?" Linda straightened as if grateful for reinforcement. "We're handling it, Mrs. Whitman." Jasmine exhaled through her nose. Minor. The word landed heavy. True, but loaded. She was 17, 3 months from 18, tall but soft-faced hair, pulled back tight because she'd learned that loose curls invited comments. She looked younger when she was tired. She was very tired. The plane lurched slightly as it turned. A soft chime sounded. "Seatbelt sign on," Ma'am Linda said again, and now there was steel under the smile. "I need you to step out into the aisle." "For what reason?" Jasmine asked. "So we can verify your seating." "You can verify it right here," Jasmine said. "My boarding pass is on the app. You can scan it." Linda didn't reach for the scanner clipped at her waist. She didn't glance at the manifest on her tablet. She leaned closer, lowering her voice the way adults do when they want to sound reasonable while being anything but. "This will go much faster if you cooperate." Jasmine looked past her toward the front of the cabin. Greg Holloway stood near the cockpit door, arms crossed. 50-something, broad shoulders, the posture of a man who'd spent decades enforcing rules, or at least his interpretation of them. "Am I being accused of something?" Jasmine asked. The question hung there, naked. Barbara huffed. "Don't be dramatic." A man across the aisle shifted in his seat. Late 50s, silver hair, wedding band worn thin. He leaned toward his wife, whispered something she shook her head at. "Stay out of it," her eyes said. Linda's jaw tightened. "No one is accusing you of anything," she said. "But you are not following crew instructions." "I haven't been given a lawful instruction," Jasmine said. She didn't raise her voice. "That was the trick. You asked me to leave my seat without cause. I declined. That's not a safety issue." There it was, the word safety, the invisible line. Greg pushed off the wall and stepped forward. The cabin seemed to shrink around him. His shadow fell across Jasmine's knees. "We have a full flight," he said. "We have procedures. When a passenger refuses a direct request, we treat that as non-compliance." "I asked to verify my ticket," Jasmine said. "That's all." Greg looked down at her phone. Not at the screen. At the case. Plain, black, no designer logo. His eyes flicked to her shoes, scuffed, to the backpack at her feet. Old canvas patched at the seams. "Who purchased your ticket?" he asked. "My father." "And where is he?" "Not on this flight." Greg nodded slowly as if that settled something. "We're going to pause taxiing and return to the gate if we need to," he said. "But right now you're going to stand up." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Irritation. Concern. The quiet fear of delay. Jasmine felt it then, sharp and sudden. Not fear, not anger. The familiar burn of being misread and knowing exactly where that road led. "I'm not standing up," she said. "I'm a minor traveling alone. If you remove me from this seat without verifying my ticket, you are detaining me without cause." Barbara laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "Listen to her, like she's a lawyer." "I don't need to be a lawyer," Jasmine said. She finally turned, met Barbara's eyes. "I need you to stop assuming." The engines throttled down. The plane slowed. Someone cursed under their breath. Greg's expression hardened. Last chance. Jasmine's fingers curled into the fabric of her jeans. She could feel the small device against her wrist warm from her skin. She hadn't planned to use it. She'd hoped she wouldn't have to, but hope was a luxury she'd learned not to rely on. "Okay," she said quietly. Linda relaxed relief, flashing across her face. "Thank you." Jasmine tilted her wrist just enough. Her thumb pressed the recessed edge of the watch, held it for 3 seconds. No sound, no light, just a faint vibration like a pulse answering back. Somewhere a signal went out. Coordinates, audio, time stamp, sent to the only person who mattered. Greg stepped closer. Too close. His hand hovered near her arm, not touching yet, but ready. "Ma'am," he said, "do not make this harder than it needs to be." Jasmine looked up at him. Really looked. She saw the fatigue, the confidence, the certainty that this moment would pass, that she would be a footnote in his day. "You already have," she said. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, calm but edged. "Flight attendants, hold positions. We're returning to the gate." A collective groan filled the cabin. Barbara Whitman slapped her hand against the armrest. "This is unbelievable." Jasmine closed her eyes for half a second. She breathed in the recycled air, smelled coffee and leather, and the faint tang of ozone. She didn't know what would happen next. She only knew it wouldn't stay small. Not anymore. The plane came to a full stop with a muted jolt that traveled through the cabin like a held breath finally released. The engines wound down, not all at once, but in stages, as if even the aircraft itself hesitated. A chime sounded. Then silence. The kind that made every small noise feel amplified. A seatbelt buckle clicked somewhere. Fabric rustled. Someone coughed and immediately seemed embarrassed by it. Greg Holloway straightened his jacket and lifted the interphone. His thumb hovered for a fraction of a second before pressing the button. "Captain," he said, voice controlled. "We have a non-compliant passenger in first class, minor, refusing crew instructions." No immediate threat, but escalating. Jasmine watched him from the corner of her eye. She stayed still. Stillness she knew unsettled people more than anger. Linda stood a step behind Greg, hands clasped too tightly at her waist. Up close, Jasmine could see the faint sheen of sweat at Linda's hairline, the way her jaw worked, as if she were chewing on something sour. This was not how the morning was supposed to go. This was not how senior crew were supposed to feel. Behind them, the curtain rustled as someone from business class leaned forward, curiosity outweighing decorum. A man whispered, "What's going on?" And a woman hissed back, "Mind your business." Barbara Whitman did not whisper. "This is exactly why I said something," she declared. "If people followed the rules, none of this would be happening." Jasmine turned her head slowly. "I followed every rule," she said. "I bought a ticket. I boarded when I was called. I sat where the ticket told me to sit." "You're a child," Barbara snapped. "Children don't belong up here alone." "My age doesn't cancel my rights," Jasmine said. Greg lowered the interphone. "All right," he said, nodding once as if arriving at a decision he'd already made. "We're going to move you to the forward jump seat while we sort this out with ground staff." "No," Jasmine said. Linda inhaled sharply. "Ma'am, this is not a request." "Then it's an unlawful order," Jasmine replied. Her voice shook now just slightly, but she didn't hide it. "You haven't verified anything. You haven't explained anything. You're just trying to make me disappear so the flight can leave." "That is enough," Greg said. His tone dropped, flattened. "Stand up." A man 2 rows back spoke up. "Hey, she's not yelling. She's not causing trouble." "Why don't you just check the system?" Greg didn't look at him. "Sir, please remain seated." Another voice, female, older. "This doesn't feel right." Linda shot Greg a look. He ignored it. Jasmine felt the space around her close in. The aisle felt narrower, the ceiling lower. She thought of her father's voice, steady and low, telling her once that people didn't like being challenged by someone they couldn't easily dismiss. She thought of the watch on her wrist, warm and quiet, already doing what it was designed to do. Greg, Linda said under her breath, "Maybe we should wait for the gate." Greg stepped closer to Jasmine. His shadow swallowed her knees. "Last instruction," he said. "If you do not comply, we will restrain you for safety." "For whose safety?" Jasmine asked. Yours, Barbara made a sound of disgust. "Unbelievable." Greg reached out. It happened fast after that. Not a blur, not chaos. just a sequence of small, terrible choices clicking into place. Greg's hand closed around Jasmine's upper arm. Not hard. Not yet. Linda flinched. Jasmine pulled back instinctively, her elbow knocking against the armrest. "That's it," Greg said. "She's resisting." "I'm not resisting," Jasmine said, breath quickening. "You grabbed me." Linda looked around, eyes darting. "Greg, zip restraints," Greg said. The word hit the cabin like a dropped plate. A few passengers gasped. Someone swore. Linda hesitated. Then she reached into the compartment near the galley door and pulled out the clear plastic ties. Her hands shook as she snapped one free. "This is excessive," the man from earlier said louder now. Sir Greg barked, "Sit down." Jasmine's heart slammed against her ribs. "Please," she said, and hated the way the word sounded thin and small. "Please don't do this." Greg twisted her arm behind her back. Pain flared hot and sharp, stealing her breath. She cried out despite herself. "Stop," Linda said. "Greg, stop. Do your job," he snapped. The tie tightened around Jasmine's wrists, biting into skin. Too tight. Way too tight. Her fingers went numb almost immediately. Someone screamed. Jasmine wasn't sure if it was her or someone else. "Sit her down," Greg ordered. They pushed her forward, not roughly enough to look violent, not gently enough to be kind. She stumbled into the jump seat, the metal frame cold against her legs. Greg buckled her in, yanking the belt hard. "Do not move," he said. "Do not speak." Tears blurred Jasmine's vision. She stared at the floor, at the scuffed metal, at the small, dark drop that fell and splashed soundlessly. She realized distantly that it was hers. Barbara stood up halfway from her seat. Finally, she said, "Some order." Linda backed away, pressing a hand to her mouth. Her eyes met Jasmine's for a split second. In them was something like fear or shame. Jasmine couldn't tell. The intercom crackled. "Flight attendants," the captain said. "Status." Greg picked it up. "Passenger restrained. We're holding position, requesting ground security." The captain paused. Understood. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time stretched and warped, measured now in the throb of Jasmine's wrists, the shallow burn in her shoulder. She tried to wiggle her fingers. Nothing. She focused on breathing. In, out, slow. Around her, the cabin buzzed with low voices. Phones lifted discreetly, screens glowing, then lowering when Linda shot them a look. A woman dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. A man stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. No one spoke to Jasmine. The door at the front of the plane opened with a soft hiss. Cool air rushed in. Footsteps sounded on the jet bridge, firm and purposeful. Not hurried, not hesitant. Jasmine lifted her head. A man stepped into view. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit that fit like it had been built for him, not bought. His hair was streaked with grey at the temples. His face was controlled, but his eyes moved fast, taking in everything at once. Greg turned. "So this area is restricted?" The man didn't answer. His gaze had locked onto the jump seat, onto Jasmine. For half a second, the world narrowed to just that. Her father's eyes widened, not in surprise, but in something deeper, something that made her chest ache. "Dad," Jasmine said. The word cracked. The air in the cabin changed. It was subtle but unmistakable, like the moment before a storm breaks when everything goes still because it knows what's coming. Daniel Carter took one step forward, then another. Greg moved to block him. "Sir, you need to step back." Daniel stopped inches from him. "Remove your hand," he said quietly. Greg laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "This is an active security situation." Daniel looked past him at the restraints cutting into his daughter's skin, at the red swelling already forming. His jaw tightened. "You have restrained a minor without verified cause," Daniel said. His voice was calm, dead calm. "You have exactly one chance to make this better." The cabin held its breath. Greg swallowed. Linda's face drained of color, and somewhere far beyond the walls of the plane, phones were ringing. Emails were being opened. People were already moving. The storm had arrived. Daniel Carter didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The kind of authority he carried had never needed volume. It settled into a room and waited for people to adjust themselves around it. So Greg said again, "Less certain now you're interfering with crew operations." Daniel finally looked at him. Really looked, the way a man does when he's deciding whether you're a problem or an inconvenience. "You put your hands on my daughter," he said. "That means this stopped being a crew operation the moment you touched her." Jasmine felt the words more than she heard them. Her throat tightened. She hadn't realized how much she'd been holding in until then. Her fingers tingled pins and needles shooting up her arms as circulation fought its way back against the plastic biting into her skin. Linda stepped forward, voice trembling. "Mr. Carter, we're just trying to follow protocol." There was confusion about her ticket. "And did you scan it?" Daniel asked. Linda opened her mouth. Closed it. "No." "Did you call the captain before restraining her?" "No." "Did you allow her to contact her legal guardian?" Linda's shoulders sagged. "No." Daniel nodded once. He turned slightly, not away from them, but enough to address the man who had stepped in behind him. Mid-40s, crisp suit, badge clipped at his belt. Airport operations, not police. Mark Daniel said, not loudly. "Just enough." The man straightened. "Yes, sir." "Document everything," Daniel said. "From the moment this aircraft returned to the gate. Names, times, statements. I want it clean." Greg bristled. "You don't have authority." Daniel's eyes snapped back to him. The temperature dropped. "I don't need authority to file a federal complaint," he said. "And I don't need your permission to call an attorney. You, however, will need both very soon." Barbara Whitman stood abruptly. Her face flushed. "This is ridiculous. You can't just storm onto a plane and start threatening the crew. My husband and I have places to be." Daniel turned to her. His expression didn't change, but something sharpened in it. "Sit down," he said. "I beg your pardon. I said sit down." Daniel repeated. "This does not concern you. It concerns the fact that you watched a child be restrained and applauded it." Barbara's mouth opened. No sound came out. She sat, Jasmine watched all of it through a haze, her father's voice anchoring her the reality of his presence, pushing back against the fear that had threatened to swallow her whole. She felt suddenly very young and very tired. Daniel knelt in front of her. The movement was deliberate, unhurried. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small tool, silver and precise. His hands didn't shake as he cut through the restraints. The plastic snapped apart. Her wrists fell forward. She hissed as blood rushed back into her hands. Daniel caught them gently, turning them palm up, examining the angry red grooves already deepening into bruises. "Does anything feel broken?" he asked softly. "My shoulder hurts," Jasmine said, "and my hands are numb." "We'll get you checked," he said. "Right now." Greg cleared his throat. "Sir, you can't just remove restraints. That's a security violation." Daniel stood slowly. He straightened his jacket. He didn't look at Greg when he spoke. "What you did was a violation," he said. "What I'm doing is stopping it." The captain emerged from the cockpit, then face pale. Captain Lewis, late 50s, a man who had flown through storms and emergencies and now found himself standing in the middle of something far more complicated. "What's going on?" the captain asked. Daniel turned. "Captain Lewis," he said. "I'm Daniel Carter." Recognition flickered. Not instant, but fast. The captain swallowed. "Yes, sir." "You allowed your crew to restrain a minor without verification or escalation," Daniel said. "I'll let the FAA decide what that means for you. Right now, this aircraft is not moving." The captain nodded. "Understood." Linda broke. "We were under pressure," she said, tears spilling over. "The flight was delayed. Everyone was upset. We thought—" "You thought wrong," Daniel said. "And thinking wrong is not a crime. Acting on it is." Mark stepped closer to Greg. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me." Greg shook his head. "This is insane." Sir Mark said again, firmer. "Now." Passengers murmured as Greg was escorted forward. Phones came up again, more openly this time. No one told them to put them away. Jasmine shifted in the jump seat. Daniel noticed immediately. He turned, held out a hand. "Can you stand?" She nodded. With his help, she rose, legs unsteady. The cabin watched as she walked back to her seat. Her seat, the one she had paid for, the one she had been told she didn't belong in. Barbara stared at the floor. Daniel placed his hand on the seat back. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice, so only Jasmine could hear. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do," he said. "You stayed calm. You used your tools. You called for help." Jasmine's eyes filled again. "I was scared." "I know," he said. "That doesn't make you weak." Ground security arrived moments later. Real uniforms, real badges. Statements were taken. Names recorded. The flight was officially delayed indefinitely. Groans filled the cabin, but no one argued. As Jasmine was escorted off the plane with her father, she felt eyes on her from every direction. Some curious, some ashamed, some quietly respectful. At the gate, the noise of the terminal rushed back in. Announcements, rolling luggage. The ordinary world resuming indifferent to what had just happened. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Then again, and again. "Everything okay?" Jasmine asked. Daniel exhaled slowly. "They will be," he said. "This is just the beginning." Behind them, through the open aircraft door, the first-class cabin sat frozen in place, suspended between what it had been and what it was about to become. The terminal smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant, a familiar airport mix that usually meant nothing but now felt sharp, almost hostile. Daniel walked beside Jasmine without touching her, close enough that she could feel the steady rhythm of his steps, far enough that she could choose her own pace. That mattered to him. It mattered to her more. They were led into a small, glass-walled office just off the gate. Inside, the hum of the terminal dulled to a murmur. A woman in a navy blazer waited there, tablet tucked under her arm, posture straight in the way of someone used to mediating conflict without ever raising her voice. "My name is Karen Holt," she said. "I'm with airport operations. Mr. Carter, thank you for coming so quickly." Daniel nodded. "My daughter was restrained on an aircraft," he said. "Quick is relative." Karen didn't flinch. She gestured to the chairs. "Please, sit. Paramedics are on their way." Jasmine sat. The chair felt too low. Her wrists throbbed in time with her pulse. She rested them in her lap, palms up, staring at the red marks like they belonged to someone else. Karen's eyes softened when she noticed. "We'll take photos for the report," she said gently. "If that's all right." Daniel answered for her. "It is." Outside the glass, people slowed as they passed, pretending not to look. One man didn't pretend at all. He stared openly. Phone half raised, then lowered it when Daniel's gaze flicked toward him. Karen cleared her throat. "I need to ask a few questions, for the record." Jasmine nodded. Her mouth felt dry. Daniel leaned back, arms crossed, listening. Jasmine Karen said, "Can you tell me what happened from the moment you boarded?" Jasmine took a breath. Then another. She spoke slowly, choosing each word like it weighed something. She described the boarding call. The seat, the first comment, the request to move, the refusal, the hands on her arm, the tie tightening. She didn't dramatize. She didn't minimize. She just told it. As she spoke, Daniel watched Karen's expression change, not dramatically, but in small ways. A tightening around the eyes, a pause before typing, a hand stilled over the tablet. When Jasmine finished, Karen nodded. "Thank you. That was very clear." The door opened softly. A paramedic stepped in, rolling a small kit. He knelt in front of Jasmine, asked permission before touching her wrists. He whistled low under his breath when he saw the marks. "Too tight," he said. "You've got a good color, though. No breaks. Shoulder might be strained." Daniel's jaw tightened. He said nothing. Karen glanced at her tablet. "Mr. Carter, I should inform you that the airline has initiated an internal incident review." Daniel smiled without humor. "They would be negligent not to." "There's also the matter of the passenger complaint," Karen added. "Mrs. Whitman has submitted a statement claiming your daughter was disruptive." Daniel's eyes flicked up. "On what basis she alleges verbal hostility?" Jasmine let out a short, incredulous laugh before she could stop herself. "I asked them to scan my ticket." Karen held up a hand. "I'm not saying the complaint has merit. I'm saying it exists." Daniel leaned forward. and it will be investigated alongside the audio recording my daughter's device captured. Correct? Karen hesitated. Just a fraction. Enough. That recording, she said carefully, will need to be reviewed by legal. Daniel nodded. Of course. My legal team will provide a copy. Karen's tablet chimed softly. She glanced down. Her eyebrows rose. It appears the flight has been officially cancelled. Daniel exhaled. That's the right call. Karen met his eyes. Mr. Carter, between you and me, this will not end quietly. Daniel's voice was low. It shouldn't. They left the office 10 minutes later. As they walked, Jasmine noticed something strange. People were looking at her differently now. Not with suspicion, not with annoyance, with curiosity, with something like recognition. At the end of the corridor, Barbara Whitman stood with her carry-on, arguing with a gate agent. Her voice was tight, brittle. This is unacceptable, she was saying. I've been inconvenienced because of a misunderstanding. Daniel stopped. Jasmine felt it before she saw it. The shift, the way his shoulders squared, not in anger, but in decision. Barbara noticed them. Her words trailed off. She straightened, smoothing her jacket, summoning dignity like a shield. Oh, she said. You. Daniel walked closer. He stopped at a polite distance. Close enough to be heard. Far enough to be calm. You used the word misunderstanding, he said. Let me clarify. Barbara lifted her chin. I was concerned about safety. You were concerned about comfort, Daniel replied. Yours. She scoffed. I didn't restrain her. No, Daniel said. You encouraged the people who did. Barbara's lips pressed into a thin line. This is America. I'm allowed to voice concerns. You are, Daniel said, and others are allowed to hear them and judge what they reveal. A small crowd had formed. Not a mob. Just enough people to make silence feel public. Barbara glanced around, flushed. I didn't know who she was. Daniel's eyes sharpened. That he said is exactly the point. The gate agent cleared his throat. Ma'am, I need you to step aside. Barbara grabbed her bag and turned away, her heels clicking too fast against the tile. Jasmine released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They sat at a quiet corner near the windows, watching planes move in the distance. The paramedic returned with paperwork. Karen stopped by again, handed Daniel a card. Someone from the airline's legal department will contact you, she said. And Mr. Carter, for what it's worth. I'm sorry. Daniel nodded. I know. When she left, Jasmine leaned back in her chair. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind exhaustion and a dull ache that settled into her bones. Are you okay? Daniel asked. She considered the question. I will be. He studied her face, the set of her jaw, the way she held herself now. Older. Quieter. Changed. You shouldn't have had to be, he said. She looked at him. I didn't do anything wrong. No, he said. You didn't. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, frowned slightly. My board wants a call. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. About me. About what this means, he said. About what it says. She nodded. And what does it say? Daniel looked out at the runway, at the long lines of planes waiting their turn. It says, The system still expects certain people to explain themselves, he said, and it gets uncomfortable when they don't. Jasmine rested her head back, eyes closing. The hum of the terminal filled the space between them. Somewhere behind them, a television played quietly. Breaking news scrolled across the bottom of the screen, the words barely legible from a distance. A blurred image of an aircraft at a gate, a caption beginning to form. Jasmine opened her eyes and looked at it. "Dad?" she said, softly. "Yes, I think people are going to talk about this." Daniel followed her gaze. His expression was thoughtful. "Let them," he said. "The story was all ready written. We're just making sure it's read correctly." Outside, a plane lifted off, climbing into the pale morning sky. The first headline appeared before they even left the airport. It flickered across the muted television screens above the departure boards. White text on red, urgent, but vague. "Unruly passenger incident. Delays Atlanta flight." The image beneath it was grainy, caught from an angle but unmistakable. A young girl seated near the cockpit, her hands bound, her head turned away. Jasmine saw it and felt something cold slide into her stomach. "That's not what happened," she said. Daniel followed her gaze. He didn't react right away. He took the moment in the way the story had already begun to bend, pulled toward the familiar shape it always took when institutions protected themselves first. "No," he said quietly. "It isn't." His phone rang. He silenced it. Then rang again. He silenced it again. A third time. He stepped a few feet away, lowering his voice. "Yes," he said. "I saw it." Pause. "No, I'm not surprised." Another pause. "We're not responding yet." Jasmine watched him, the calm authority in his posture, the way people nearby unconsciously gave him space without knowing why. She wondered what it would feel like to move through the world with that kind of gravity, to be assumed competent before proving anything at all. When Daniel returned, he crouched in front of her. "They're going to get this wrong before they get it right," he said. "That's how it always goes. I don't want them to make me the problem," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she curled them into fists. "They won't," he said. "Not if we're careful." They left the airport through a side exit, escorted by security, who didn't say much but kept a respectful distance. Outside, the Georgia heat pressed down thick and immediate. Daniel's driver waited by the curb door open. As Jasmine slid into the back seat, she saw a man across the street, raising his phone, filming openly now. The car pulled away. Inside, the world narrowed to leather seats and tinted glass. Jasmine leaned her head back and closed her eyes. The ache in her shoulder pulsed dully. The image on the screen, replayed in her mind, cropped and captioned, and already stripped of context. "People are going to argue about this," she said after a moment. "Yes," Daniel said. "They'll argue about whether you were polite enough, whether you looked scared enough, whether you deserved help. That's not fair." "No," he said. "It's familiar." His phone buzzed again. This time he answered. "Mark." Pause. "Good. I want everything preserved. Every log. Every communication." He listened, eyes narrowing slightly. "They're saying what?" Another pause. His jaw tightened. Of course they are. He ended the call and exhaled slowly. The airline released a statement. Jasmine opened her eyes. Already, he said. They say their crew acted in good faith to ensure safety. They regret any distress caused. Distress, Jasmine repeated. She laughed once, sharp. They tied my hands. Daniel nodded. They're choosing their words carefully. That's why we will too. The car merged onto the highway. The city slid past glass and steel, giving way to trees and open sky. At home, the house felt too quiet. Daniel's assistant had left bottled water on the kitchen counter, pain medication with a note taped neatly to the box. Jasmine sat at the island wrists, resting on the cool marble. The red marks had darkened to purple. Daniel watched her from across the room. I want you to talk to someone, he said. Not a lawyer. A counselor. She hesitated. I'm not broken. I know, he said. That's not why. She nodded slowly. An hour later, Daniel sat in his study jacket, off sleeves rolled up. His laptop glowed with open documents, timelines forming. Names. Roles. Sequences. He worked methodically the way he always did when something mattered too much to be left to emotion. Down the hall, Jasmine lay on her bed, scrolling through her phone, despite herself. The story had multiplied. Different angles, different takes. Some people angry on her behalf, others skeptical, a few outright hostile. She stopped when she saw a clip. Short. Edited. It showed the moment Greg's hand reached for her arm, cut just before the restraint. The caption read, "Passenger refuses crew orders, causes delay." Her chest tightened. She locked the phone and stared at the ceiling. A knock sounded. Daniel stood in the doorway. "May I?" he asked. She nodded. He sat on the edge of the bed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "When I was your age," he said finally, "I learned something the hard way. Silence fills itself. If you don't tell your story, someone else will tell it for you." Jasmine turned her head toward him. "I don't want to be a headline." "I know," he said. "But you already are." She swallowed. "What if they don't believe me?" Daniel met her eyes. "Then we show them why they should." That evening the call came. Airline legal, polite, careful. They expressed concern. They asked for patience. They suggested a private resolution. Daniel listened. He thanked them. He declined. "We're not looking for a settlement," he said. "We're looking for accountability." When the call ended, he sat back, eyes tired but focused. Outside, the sky darkened, cicadas beginning their steady chorus. In another part of the city, Greg Holloway sat alone in his kitchen television on but muted. His phone lay face down on the table. He hadn't answered the last 5 calls. His wife stood at the sink, hands submerged in soapy water that had gone cold. "They're saying you restrained a child," she said quietly. Greg stared at the wall. "I followed procedure." "Did you?" she asked. He didn't answer. Across town, Barbara Whitman refreshed her email again. Fingers tapping anxiously. Messages from friends had slowed. Invitations she expected hadn't arrived. She told herself it would blow over. It always did. Back at the Carter house, Daniel drafted a single statement. Clear, factual, no embellishment. He read it twice, then a third time. Jasmine stood behind him, reading over his shoulder. "It sounds like you," she said. "It sounds like the truth," he replied. She took a breath. "Post it." He did. Within minutes the reaction shifted. The full context began to spread. The audio clip, the timeline, the missing pieces snapping into place. Jasmine watched it happen in real time, the tide turning slowly but unmistakably. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt something else, heavier, quieter. Daniel closed the laptop and stood. "This isn't over," he said. "Not by a long shot." Jasmine nodded. She looked down at her wrists, then back up at him. "I know." Outside, the night pressed in full of noise and movement, the world already reshaping the story they had tried to flatten. By morning, the narrative had split into camps. Jasmine could feel it before she read it, the way the air in the house carried a low, restless energy, like something unfinished pacing the halls. Daniel was already awake when she came downstairs. Coffee untouched, jacket on phone, pressed to his ear. "No," he said. "We're not retracting anything?" A pause. "Because it happened." Another pause. "You can advise your client however you want." He ended the call and looked up as Jasmine entered the kitchen. "Sleep at all?" "A little," she said. "Enough to dream." "Bad ones?" She shrugged. "Not exactly. Just loud." He nodded. Loud dreams made sense. Everything else was loud, too. News panels arguing over whether restraint was justified. Commentators dissecting body language toned the angle of her shoulders when she said no. Strangers debating her character as if it were a policy issue. Daniel slid a mug toward her. "Eat something." She took a sip instead. "They're saying you pulled strings." "Of course they are," he said. "It's easier than admitting the system failed." Her phone buzzed. A message from a classmate she barely knew. "I saw what happened. I'm sorry." Another from a teacher. "Proud of you." Mixed in with others that said less kind things that questioned motives and memory. "Do you want me to take your phone?" Daniel asked. "No," she said. "I want to see it." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right." The call from the airline came at 10:30. Not legal this time. Corporate communications. A senior vice president, whose voice was smooth, practiced careful to sound empathetic, without conceding anything. He asked for cooperation. He asked for time. He asked indirectly for silence. Daniel listened, then said, "You restrained a minor. Time is not the issue." When the call ended, Daniel leaned back, exhaling. "They're preparing to suspend the crew," he said. With pay," Jasmine repeated. "For now," he said. "That won't last." The knock at the door came sooner than expected. A uniformed officer stood on the porch, not aggressive, not apologetic. Just procedural. He asked for a statement. Daniel invited him in. The officer took notes, asked Jasmine to recount events again. She did. Her voice wavered once, then steadied. When she finished, the officer nodded, closed his notebook. "There will be an investigation," he said. "FAA as well." "Good," Daniel said. After he left the house, felt smaller. Jasmine went upstairs, opened her laptop. She hesitated before clicking the file, then pressed play. The audio began quietly. Cabin noise. Her own voice steady asking to have her ticket scanned. Linda's voice tight. Greg's authoritative. The shift when the tone changed, when language hardened. The moment hands touched her arm. She stopped it there. Her watch buzzed softly. A notification. Daniel had forwarded her something. An email from the airline's board requesting a meeting. Not today. Soon. The afternoon brought a new wave. A longer video surfaced, shot from 2 rows back. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. It showed her seated. It showed the restraint. It showed her crying out. The headline changed. Questions replaced accusations. Analysts spoke of training failures, of implicit bias, of risk management. Jasmine closed the laptop and stared out the window. A delivery truck passed. A neighbor walked a dog. Life went on, indifferent to her becoming a case study. Daniel joined her, standing close without crowding. "They want to talk," he said. The board. About me, about everything he said. About liability, about public trust. She was quiet for a moment. "What do you want to do?" He looked at her. Really looked. "I want you to decide how visible you want to be." She considered that. Visibility had a cost. She felt it already, a constant pressure. But invisibility had a cost too. She knew that better than most. "I don't want to hide," she said. "But I don't want to perform either." Daniel nodded. "Then we won't." That evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the living room, Daniel's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen. Frowned. "It's Greg Holloway's attorney," he said. Jasmine stiffened. "What does he want?" "To talk," Daniel said. "To apologize. To explain. Explain what she asked." That he was tired, Daniel met her eyes. "Do you want to hear it?" She hesitated. The image of Greg's hand on her arm flashed unbidden. The tightening plastic, the command to sit down and be quiet. "No," she said. "Not right now." Daniel declined the call. Across town, Greg sat in a small conference room, his attorney beside him. He stared at his hands at the faint indentation where his ring used to sit before he took it off. His phone lay silent. He told himself he'd done nothing wrong. Then he replayed the moment again, the split second when he could have stepped back and didn't. At the same time, Barbara Whitman sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through messages that had shifted in tone. Friends asking if she was all right, others not asking at all. She typed and deleted a response typed again. She told herself she'd only spoken up. She hadn't tied anyone's hands. The difference felt thinner than it used to. Back at the Carter house, Daniel and Jasmine ate dinner quietly. Halfway through, Jasmine looked up. "Do you think they'll change anything?" Daniel chewed thoughtfully. "They'll say they will," he said. "Some things will. Training, language, procedures. And the rest?" He shrugged. "The rest takes longer." Later, after Jasmine went upstairs, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen island laptop open. He drafted notes for the board meeting. He outlined failures not personal, but systemic. He attached evidence, He anticipated defenses and dismantled them in advance. His phone buzzed. A message from Mark at Airport Operations. FAA inquiry officially opened. Crew removed from duty pending outcome. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Progress. Slow, uneven, but real. Upstairs, Jasmine lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her wrist ached less now. The bruise had darkened, spreading like ink under skin. She pressed her fingers lightly against it, then let her hand fall. Her watch buzzed again. A message from a girl she didn't know. My sister is 13. She flies alone sometimes. Thank you for not backing down. Jasmine swallowed. She typed back, then erased it. Typed again. Sent. You deserve to feel safe. Downstairs, Daniel turned off the lights one by one. Outside, the night hummed with ordinary sounds. Somewhere, planes lifted off and landed their paths, crossing invisible lines in the sky. This wasn't over. Not even close. But for the first time since the morning of the flight, Jasmine felt something shift inside her. Not relief. Not victory. Resolve. And resolve, she was learning, was louder than fear. The meeting room on the 22nd floor smelled faintly of polished wood and ozone, the kind of place where decisions were usually made quietly and explained later with carefully chosen language. Daniel sat at the head of the table, jacket on sleeves, buttoned posture, relaxed in a way that made other people straighten without realizing why. Across from him, 3 members of the airline's board shifted in their seats. Legal counsel lined up along one wall, tablets glowing softly. Jasmine sat beside her father, hands folded in her lap. She hadn't wanted to come at first, not because she was afraid, but because she didn't want to be turned into an exhibit. Daniel had promised she wouldn't be. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, thank you for meeting with us on such short notice. Daniel nodded. I didn't come for pleasantries. A ripple of discomfort moved around the table. The general counsel adjusted his glasses. We want to start by saying we regret the incident involving your daughter. Regret is an emotion, Daniel said. I'm here to discuss actions. The counsel glanced at his notes. The crew involved has been placed on unpaid administrative leave, pending the outcome of the investigation. Jasmine felt Daniel's knee shift slightly beside hers. Unpaid, he repeated. Yes. And the passenger who initiated the complaint. The chairman hesitated. We're reviewing her conduct as well. Daniel leaned back. Review faster. The room went quiet. One of the board members, a woman in her late 50s with a careful smile, spoke up. Mr. Carter, with respect, we need to be cautious. There are optics. Public pressure. We don't want to appear reactive. Daniel turned to her. You restrained a minor on a commercial flight without verification, he said. If that isn't a reason to react, your definition of caution is broken. Jasmine watched their faces change. Not anger, calculation. This was a language they understood. The chairman folded his hands. What are you asking for? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He reached into his briefcase and placed a thin folder on the table. He slid it forward. These are not demands, he said. They are corrections. The counsel opened the folder, eyes scanning quickly. His brow furrowed. Mandatory retraining. Revised protocols for minors traveling alone. Independent oversight on restraint authorization. A public acknowledgement of procedural failure. Not apology. Acknowledgement. And this Daniel added. Tapping the final page is non-negotiable. Any crew member who restrains a minor without escalation to the captain, and verification will be terminated. The woman board member inhaled sharply. That's a strong stance. It's a necessary one, Daniel replied. The chairman looked at Jasmine, then really looked at her for the first time. She met his gaze without flinching. We'll need time to review, he said. Daniel stood. You have until close of business tomorrow. As they left the building, the city stretched below them, glass and traffic and sunlight. Jasmine felt drained but lighter somehow, like something had been set down. Did that go how you expected? She asked, as they stepped into the elevator. Daniel considered it. Better than I hoped. At home, the phone rang again. This time, Daniel answered immediately. His expression shifted as he listened. What he said? A pause. Send it to me. He hung up and looked at Jasmine. A new video just surfaced. Her stomach tightened. Another angle. Another moment, he said. They watched it together on the living room television. The footage was clearer than the others, shot from the aisle steady hands. It captured the instant after the restraints clicked shut. Jasmine's breath hitching, Greg's voice low and irritated, Linda's thin with uncertainty, then Barbara Whitman's voice, unmistakable. She brought this on herself. The room felt suddenly very quiet. That's it, Jasmine said softly. Daniel nodded. That's it. Within the hour, the clip was everywhere. Commentators stopped hedging. The language sharpened. Phrases like systemic failure and contributory conduct replaced unruly passenger. The airline's statement was updated, then updated again. Daniel's phone buzzed. A message from the board. We will comply. The next day, the airline held a press conference. No banners, no slogans. Just a podium and a row of executives who looked like they hadn't slept. The CEO spoke carefully, acknowledging failures, announcing changes. Names were not mentioned, but consequences were implied. Jasmine watched from the couch, knees pulled up, Daniel standing behind her. When the conference ended, she muted the television. They said a lot, she said. Did they say enough? For now, Daniel replied. Later that afternoon, there was another knock at the door. This time, it was a woman in a dark suit carrying a leather folder. Barbara Whitman's attorney. Daniel didn't invite her in. He listened at the threshold. My client wishes to express her remorse, the attorney said. She understands now that her words matter, Daniel said. So do silences. She's prepared to issue a statement. Daniel shook his head. Tell your client to sit with what she said. Public statements are not absolution. The attorney nodded stiffly and left. That evening, Jasmine sat at her desk, homework, spread out in front of her, but her mind elsewhere. Her phone buzzed with a notification, an email from the airline addressed directly to her. We are sorry for how we failed you. She read it twice, then closed it. Daniel stood in the doorway. You don't have to respond. I know, she said. But I might. He nodded. When you're ready. She looked down at her wrists. The bruises were fading now, yellowing at the edges. They would disappear soon. The memory wouldn't. Dad, she said. Yes. What if this happens again? To someone else? Daniel crossed the room and sat beside her. Then they'll have a record, he said. And a path. She leaned back in her chair, considering that. Outside, a plane roared overhead, low and loud, then faded into the distance. The world hadn't changed overnight, but something had shifted. Lines redrawn, assumptions challenged. Jasmine opened a new document on her laptop. She didn't know yet what she was going to write. She just knew she wasn't done speaking. And this time she wouldn't be ignored. The letter arrived on thick paper, not the kind meant to be read quickly. Jasmine found it folded neatly on the kitchen counter when she came home from school, her name printed in careful block letters. She didn't open it right away. She carried it upstairs, sat on the edge of her bed, and stared at it as if it might move on its own. Daniel watched from the doorway. You don't have to read it now, he said. I know, she replied. But if I don't, it'll sit in my head. She broke the seal. The apology was long, measured. Written by lawyers, edited by public relations, softened at the edges, so it wouldn't cut the people who sent it. The airline acknowledged failures. It expressed remorse. It outlined policy changes already announced. Near the end, one line stood apart, almost naked in its simplicity. We are sorry for the harm caused to you personally. Jasmine read that line twice, then a third time. They didn't say my name, she said. They did. Daniel replied gently. Just not loudly. She folded the letter and set it aside. Is that supposed to be enough? No, Daniel said. It's supposed to be a beginning. At school, the hallway felt different now. Teachers paused a beat longer when they saw her. Students whispered, then stopped when she passed. Some smiled, uncertain but sincere. Others looked away, embarrassed by proximity. In history class, her teacher lingered after the bell. If you need extensions, she said quietly, just ask. Jasmine nodded. Thank you. At lunch, a girl slid into the seat across from her. My mum made me fly alone when I was your age, she said. I was scared the whole time. She hesitated. I wish I'd known I could say no. Jasmine smiled, small but real. You can. That afternoon, Daniel picked her up instead of the driver. The car ride was quiet until Jasmine spoke. They're asking if I'll testify, she said. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. FAA investigators. And the civil case, she added. How do you feel about it? She thought for a moment. Like it shouldn't just be about me. That evening, Daniel's study filled with people. Lawyers, advocates, a former regulator Daniel trusted. They spoke in careful tones, mapping out timelines, consequences, ripple effects. Jasmine listened from the stairs, unseen. They'll argue this was an isolated incident, one lawyer said. It wasn't. Daniel replied, and we can prove it, another voice chimed in. Public sentiment is with you now. But it shifts. Then we don't chase it, Daniel said. We stay factual. Later, after the house quieted, Jasmine sat with her laptop open, the cursor blinking at the top of a blank page. She thought about the letter, about the apology that wasn't quite one, about the girl in the cafeteria, about the way the crew had looked at her not as a person, but as a problem to be solved. She began to type. I didn't expect to become a story. I expected to get on a plane. The words came slowly at first, then faster. She wrote about the moment she said no, about how fear doesn't always sound like screaming, about how authority feels different when it's wrong. She didn't name names. She didn't accuse. She described. When she finished, she sent it to Daniel without comment. He read it twice, then a third time. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "This is yours," he said. "Not theirs." The essay went live the next morning, published by a national outlet that didn't sensationalize. It didn't shout. It let her voice stand on its own. The response was quieter than the videos, deeper. Emails from parents, from flight attendants who said they'd seen things and stayed silent, from regulators who promised to listen. At the airport, Greg Holloway sat in a waiting room, hands folded, eyes fixed on the floor. He had read the essay too. He didn't tell anyone that. He told himself it didn't matter. But it did. Barbara Whitman read it as well, sitting alone at her kitchen table. She closed her laptop and stared at the wall for a long time. She didn't write a statement. She didn't call her attorney. She simply sat the echo of her own words, finally loud enough to hear. Weeks passed. The bruises on Jasmine's wrists faded completely. The memory didn't. But it changed shape, less sharp, more defined. One afternoon, Daniel and Jasmine stood at the airport again. Not to fly, to walk, to stand in the space where it had happened and let it be ordinary again. A gate agent recognized them. She hesitated, then smiled. "I'm glad you're okay," she said. Jasmine smiled back. "Me too." As they left, a plane lifted off overhead, the sound familiar now, no longer a threat. Just a machine, doing what it was built to do. Jasmine looked up at the sky. "I think I'm ready," she said. "For what?" Daniel asked. "To stop being careful," she replied. He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. The story was no longer just about what had been done to her. It was about what she chose to do next. The hearing room was smaller than Jasmine expected. No grand courtroom, no sweeping gestures. Just rows of fixed chairs, a long table at the front, flags in the corner, fluorescent lights that hummed softly overhead. It felt deliberate, designed to strip drama away and leave only facts behind. She sat between Daniel and her attorney, hands folded, posture straight. Across the room, Greg Holloway sat alone at a separate table. His shoulders rounded in a way she hadn't seen before. He looked smaller here. Older. The confidence that had filled the aisle of the aircraft was gone, replaced by something brittle and defensive. The FAA investigator cleared her throat. "This hearing concerns procedural violations on Flight 614, she said. Her voice was neutral, practiced. "We will hear testimony regarding the restraint of a minor passenger." Jasmine felt Daniel's presence beside her, solid and quiet. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. When her name was called, Jasmine stood. The room seemed to tilt slightly as she walked forward. She took the oath without hesitation. Sat. Adjusted the microphone. "Please describe the events in your own words," the investigator said. Jasmine did. She spoke plainly the way she had learned to do when emotions threatened to run ahead of her. She described the request to move the refusal, the grip on her arm. She described the sound the restraint made when it tightened, sharp and final. "Did you feel you posed a safety threat?" the investigator asked. "No," Jasmine said. "I felt like I was being treated as one." Greg's attorney objected once. Procedural language, leading. The objection was noted and overruled. When Greg testified, his voice wavered at first, then steadied as he leaned into justification. He spoke of policy, of discretion, of the pressure to keep flights on schedule. He said the word safety again and again, like a shield. The investigator listened, asked questions, did not interrupt. "Did you verify the passenger's ticket before restraining her?" she asked. "No," Greg admitted. "Did you attempt to de-escalate? I issued clear instructions." "That is not what I asked." Greg swallowed. "No." The room went quiet. When it ended, there was no gavel, no declaration, just the promise of a written decision to follow. Jasmine felt strangely empty as she walked out the tension she'd been holding, dissolving without fanfare. Outside, the sky was a flat grey, heavy with the threat of rain. Daniel walked beside her, his pace measured. "You did well," he said. She nodded. "I didn't feel brave." "Bravery is rarely a feeling," he replied. Weeks later, the decision arrived. Findings of procedural failure, violations noted, sanctions recommended. Greg Holloway's certification was suspended, pending retraining and review. The airline was fined. New guidelines were mandated. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't final, but it was real. The civil case moved forward quietly, winding through motions and negotiations. Jasmine attended school, took tests, laughed with friends. Some days she forgot, other days she didn't. One afternoon she received an email from an address she didn't recognize. Greg Holloway. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. The message was short. No excuses, no legal language. Just an acknowledgement. "I was wrong. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness." Jasmine closed the laptop. She didn't reply. Not because she couldn't, because she didn't need to. At dinner that night, Daniel mentioned that the airline had implemented all the changes they'd agreed to. Oversight committees, mandatory reporting, independent audits. "Will it stick?" Jasmine asked. "Some of it," he said. "Enough to matter." She thought about that. Enough to matter was a phrase she'd learned to appreciate. Graduation came and went. Caps thrown. Photos taken. Life marking time the way it always did, indifferent to individual storms. On the morning she left for college, Daniel drove her himself. The campus buzzed with activity. Parents hauling boxes, students laughing nervously. As he helped unload her things, Jasmine paused. She looked at him, really looked. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper now. Softer, too. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For letting me lead," she replied. He smiled. "You always were." That night, alone in her dorm room, Jasmine sat on her bed and looked at her wrists. The skin was smooth now, unmarked. She pressed her fingers there anyway, a habit she hadn't broken yet. She thought about the hearing room, about the quiet weight of truth when it's finally spoken into a space built to hear it. Outside her window, the campus lights glowed. Somewhere, A plane passed overhead, unseen but audible. Jasmine lay back and closed her eyes. The story was still being written, but it no longer owned her. She owned it. The first flight Jasmine took after everything happened was not dramatic. No cameras, no special seating. Just a regular afternoon departure sunlight slanting through the terminal windows, the ordinary choreography of boarding groups and rolling bags. She stood in line with everyone else, backpack over one shoulder, ticket on her phone, heart steady in her chest. Daniel walked beside her until the gate. He stopped their hands in his coat pockets, watching her the way parents do when they know something has shifted for good. "You don't have to prove anything today," he said. "I know," she replied. "I'm just going somewhere." He smiled. "Exactly." When her group was called, she stepped forward without hesitation. The gate agent scanned her ticket, smiled and waved her through. No second look. No pause. Jasmine felt the quiet relief of something going right without effort. On the plane, she found her seat and stowed her bag. She sat buckled in, rested her hands on her lap. The cabin filled around her. Voices overlapped. Overhead bins thumped shut. The familiar sounds no longer felt like warnings. Just movement. A woman across the aisle nodded at her. Jasmine nodded back. It was nothing, and it was everything. As the plane pushed back, Jasmine looked out the window. The city slid away slowly, buildings shrinking into patterns, then into distance. She thought about the girl she had been on that first flight, sitting rigid, sensing trouble before it arrived. She didn't pity that girl. She respected her. The semester unfolded the way semesters do. Papers, late nights, new friends who knew her only as Jasmine, not a headline. Professors who challenged her ideas and listened when she pushed back. A campus that felt imperfect, but open. She spoke once at an orientation session, not as a victim, not as a symbol, but as a student. She talked about systems and responsibility, about how authority should work. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Daniel watched from the back of the room. He didn't clap until everyone else did. Then he kept clapping a little longer. The civil case resolved quietly. No dramatic press release, just a settlement that included funding for independent oversight and mandatory reporting systems across multiple carriers. Daniel insisted the details be public, not the dollar amount, the changes. Some outlets covered it, others moved on. The world always moved on. Greg Holloway completed his retraining. He never returned to the same role. He took a desk position far from cabins and aisles. He learned new language. He learned limits. It was not redemption. It was consequence. Barbara Whitman withdrew from public life. Invitations stopped arriving. Her name faded from columns. The silence she had once used as insultation became something else entirely. Jasmine did not track either of them closely. She had learned that attention was a resource, and she chose where to spend it. One evening, months later, she sat at her desk in her dorm room, laptop open, rain tapping softly against the window. She reread the essay she had written, not with pain, now, but with clarity. It no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a marker. A line between before and after. Her watch buzzed with a message from Daniel. Landing soon. Call you later. She smiled and closed the laptop. The story followed her sometimes, in comments, in mentions, in quiet conversations with people who recognized her and didn't make a spectacle of it. She listened when it mattered. She disengaged when it didn't. What stayed with her most was not the fear or even the anger. It was the moment she had said no and meant it. The moment the word had held. That was the part she carried forward. Years later, when the policies had been revised again, and the headlines archived when new names replaced old ones in the news cycle, the impact remained in small ways. A gate agent who paused to explain instead of command. A crew member who chose verification over assumption. A teenager who watched a clip online and learned that refusal could be calm and still be firm. Jasmine graduated. She walked across the stage, steady and unafraid applause, rising and falling like weather. Daniel watched from the audience, hands clasped, eyes bright. Afterward, as they stood together in the crowd, someone asked him what it felt like to see his daughter become a public voice. Daniel answered simply, "She always had one." That night, Jasmine stood on a balcony overlooking the city lights, stretching into the distance. She thought about how stories end, or don't, how some moments close cleanly and others echo. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt grounded. Somewhere below, traffic hummed. Somewhere above, a plane crossed the sky, its lights blinking steadily, a line drawn from one place to another. Jasmine turned back inside, shutting the door gently behind her. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of a moment when dignity mattered more than comfort, show your support by tapping like subscribe to stay with us for stories that speak to accountability and courage, and share your thoughts in the comments with these 3 words: share your story.